The Senate is set to confirm 3 military nominations, and the Pentagon promises to review Don't Ask, Don't Tell discharges. All of that and more today, September 21st, 2023. Good morning, Early Birds. I'm Simone Perez, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, a surprise Senate deal offers a breakthrough in the blanket hold on military promotions in the upper chamber. Senate leaders announced plans yesterday to fill 3 vacancies on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Charles Q. Brown is set to be confirmed as the new Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, General Randy George as the new Army Chief of Staff, and General Eric Smith as the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Senators said the final votes were expected by this morning. The news came as Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville prepared to force a chamber vote on Marine Corps nominee General Smith. His nomination has been held up since June. Tuberville placed a blanket hold that has stalled hundreds of military promotions. His objections center on the Pentagon's policy to pay for travel for troops seeking reproductive health care outside of states where abortion has been restricted or banned entirely. The White House and congressional Democrats have called the Pentagon's policy critical health care for service members. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has argued it allows the military to, quote, recruit, retain, and maintain the readiness of a highly qualified force.
On the issue of providing non-covered reproductive health care for our women, I would just say, Senator, almost 1 in 5 of our troops are women. And they don't get a chance to choose where they're stationed. So almost 80,000 of our women are stationed in places where they don't have access to non-covered reproductive health care. And I heard from our troops, I heard from our senior leaders, I heard from our chiefs and also our secretaries, and this policy is based on strong legal grounds.
But Republicans have largely decried it as an illegal workaround of state and federal laws. House GOP lawmakers have included plans to roll back the military abortion policy in a series of pending defense budget bills. However, it's unclear whether those measures will survive budget negotiations. Tuberville has been pushing for votes on individual nominees, but Democratic leaders have balked at his demand. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer angrily blasted Tuberville's moves as a partisan game yesterday, but he acknowledged that some confirmations needed to move ahead as soon as possible to keep the ongoing political fight from turning into a national security threat. Schumer indicated he would oppose similar individual or small group votes of defense nominees in the future. Ahead of the votes, Tuberville said he was pleased with the outcome. Tuberville's holds have snarled the typically non-controversial military promotions process. Yesterday's deal is set to fill in 3 key leadership positions, but still leaves the fate of nearly 300 others in doubt. Among the remaining block nominees are Admiral Lisa Franchetti and General David Alvin. Those 2 are Biden's picks to serve as the top Navy officer and Air Force leader, respectively. They had confirmation hearings last week and are expected to have their files forwarded to the full Senate in the coming weeks. Another important story, the Pentagon will reevaluate discharges of thousands of LGBTQ+ veterans forced out of the service because of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Department of Defense personnel will review service records of LGBTQ+ veterans who left the military under less than honorable terms. Here's why it matters. A less than honorable discharge is exacerbated by its material consequences. Veterans without an honorable discharge may struggle to access a range of benefits, from loans to healthcare, and covered funeral expenses. The initiative arrived on the 12-year anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The 1994 policy prohibited LGBTQ+ service members from disclosing or openly embracing their sexual orientation while in uniform. Advocates say at least 35,000 service members were released from duty because of their sexual orientation between 1980 and 2011. A group of veterans sued the Department of Defense in early August to upgrade their discharges and strike any mention of their sexuality from their military records. They claim those designations violate their privacy. Advocates also say the discharge status review process is, quote, burdensome, opaque, expensive, and for many veterans, inaccessible. Pentagon leaders hope the new review process will ease the burden on former service members hoping to clear their names. U.S. defense officials did not specify when the review would begin. They also noted that many evaluations could drag on due to large caseload and the ambiguity surrounding some dismissals. The discharge review will not include the nearly 20,000 LGBTQ+ veterans expelled from the military because of the implementation of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In other news, a new report from the government's accountability watchdog found that poor oversight left military barracks in dire condition. For more on this, Military Times editorial fellow Jaime Moore Carrillo joins the episode today. So Jaime, what were the report's main findings?
Yeah, so the report, which is almost 120 pages long, kind of comprehensively documents a whole rap sheet of just dirty and dangerous living conditions in barracks that many rank-and-file service members are already quite familiar with. Mold, dysfunctional plumbing, no heating in the winter, no air conditioning in the summer, broken fire safety systems, and so on. Maintenance requests are often ignored or take months to fulfill. And the report also found that these conditions are widespread across installations for every branch of the military. And military officials and service members interviewed for the report stressed that these really subpar living standards, hurt morale, hurt the mental health of soldiers and troops, and, hamper force readiness, and also dissuade people from joining the military and reenlisting. And, investigators blamed a lot of the problems on systemic department-wide deficiencies. They highlighted the fact that barrack repairs are, chronically underfunded. Pentagon officials couldn't provide specific tallies of how much of the billions in facility sustainment funding they get is dedicated to maintaining barracks and keeping them up to par. Investigators also laid into the Pentagon system for evaluating housing conditions. Some barracks that were described as unlivable actually had glowing DoD condition reports.
And besides the very basic answer that these barracks are where our service members sleep, why does this matter additionally to service members?
It's important that an authoritative government watchdog has explicitly called out the issue. Enlistees and lower-ranking service members have called out these shoddy conditions for decades, but little has changed. Many of them feel ignored. And as you mentioned, these conditions, which have been sort of chronically unaddressed, really dissuade people from joining and hurt the physical and mental health of the force at a time when military bigwigs and national security officials are gearing up for a great power conflict. All to say, when it comes to sort of the day-to-day experiences of service members, I'm sure that there's a hope that more noise, especially from more weighty bodies that have members of Congress and Pentagon officials in their ear, may finally cause something to change at a more systemic level.
Thanks, Jaime. For more conversations like this one, please like and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the radar for today, much like government employees and service members, government contractors are also preparing for a potential government shutdown. For more on this, Federal Times reporter Molly Weisner now joins the episode today. So, Molly, where are government agencies right now? Are they planning for a shutdown? I mean, what's the guidance so far for them?
Yeah, so of course, nobody has a crystal ball. I think this would make the situation a whole lot easier if we did. But generally, I think agencies are sort of in a wait and see approach, but they do have contingency plans in place already. Agencies right now, I think, are still very much waiting to see what happens. I think some are in a position where they don't want to give their workforce too much of an indication that things might, not come to an agreement come midnight on September 30th, simply because there's still time. However, it is customary, and the White House requires it of agencies to have contingency plans in place just in case. So every single agency has a contingency plan. They're supposed to be updated periodically, but you'll notice, and they're all on the Office of Management and Budget's website, you'll notice that some, but not all, are updated for 2023 or even this month. But the Defense Department is one of them. They have a recently updated plan in place, as well as several others. So feds and contractors will really be in the dark on this until we get kind of to the 11th hour. Some agencies may choose to brief folks on, what maybe to expect, but I think until a shutdown or a continuing resolution really seems imminent, there's just not a whole lot that agencies, I think, can do from now except hope that they've got, the proper plans in place that they can execute should something happen.
And so what about the contract workforce? I mean, obviously they'll take a hint from agencies, but do they really get any more advanced notice or planning here? And what have those effects been in years past on the Department of Defense?
Yeah, so the contract workforce, again, I mean, they are very much in the dark about this. But it's true when it comes to, a contract, changing it, modifying it, issuing a stop work order. That's something that we've seen given in the past when, an agency doesn't have new funding. And according to the Anti-Deficiency Act, which is the federal law that triggers here in this case, is, an agency basically cannot spend money they don't have. They cannot requisition work from a contractor if they don't have the funds to pay for it. So what does that mean for the contractors? Well, that often means that, new contracts certainly cannot be started. It basically says that you can't do anything new. And so that can also affect things like exercising options on a contract to purchase additional goods or services, to modify them in any way that would affect the cost, all those kinds of things. So really the only person that has the warrant authority in government to tell a contractor to stop, start, change work is the contracting officer. And since these folks are federal employees and they don't know any more than the rest of us what's going to happen in roughly a week from now, they really don't have as much advance notice. But all of the advice out there from attorneys I spoke with and folks in industry space have said, regardless, get in contract early and often with your contracting officer. Ask them what wiggle room they have for you. Because as we know, in past shutdowns, the last two of the longer ones, while the exact numbers I think are difficult to count, estimates out there say that tens of thousands of contractors were furloughed and, weren't able to pay their folks. So the effects are very real here. And we have to remember also that people who work on government contracts are not legally entitled to back pay the same way that federal employees are. So there's a real stake in this that they have to contend with.
Thanks, Molly. Congress has until September 30th to reach an agreement on spending or pass a short-term spending measure. And now here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. The Defense Department awarded funding to 8 innovation hubs to increase semiconductor technologies and microelectronics production. The goal is to boost domestic production of microchips that power everything from cell phones to cars to the F-35 fighter jet. The New York Times reported the United States is discussing terms of a mutual defense treaty with Saudi Arabia. Officials said the deal would resemble military pacts with Japan and South Korea. Russian President Vladimir Putin accepted an invitation to visit China next month. China's foreign minister extended the offer for Putin to visit. And Azerbaijan and Armenian forces reached a ceasefire agreement yesterday. The deal ended 2 days of fighting in a separatist region that has been a flashpoint for decades. And on this day in history, in 1942, the U.S. B-29 Superfortress made its debut flight. The Superfortress did not make its bombing run debut until June 1944, nearly 2 years later. That's it for us this morning. To get more top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like and rating wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted and produced by me, Zimone Perez, and today's episode featured stories by Leo Shane III, Irene Lowenson, Jaime Moore Carrillo, and Molly Weisner. Our podcast editor is Jessica Edwards, and our editor-in-chief is Mike Roos. Have a great day.